On a clear October morning in 1929, America was louder than it had ever been. Telephones rang endlessly in Manhattan offices. Typewriters clacked like machine guns. Ticker tapes spilled from machines, curling onto the marble floors of Wall Street like white snakes, each line screaming profits, growth, and unstoppable progress. Men in pressed suits laughed loudly. Secretaries hurried past with coffee. Outside, automobiles honked, radios played jazz, and newspapers promised a future that glittered brighter than gold. America believed it had discovered a secret: prosperity without limits. And then, almost without warning, the noise began to fade. Not all at once, not with an explosion, but with confusion, then fear, then silence. This is the story of how the most powerful economy on Earth collapsed into itself, and how an entire nation learned what it meant to lose everything without a war being declared. To understand the Great Depression, you must first understand the mood of America in the 1920s. The Great War was over. Europe was wounded and rebuilding, but the United States stood tall, factories booming, cities expanding, and money flowing like never before. Electricity lit homes. Assembly lines turned workers into producers of miracles. Radios brought voices into living rooms. Refrigerators replaced iceboxes. Credit made dreams feel affordable. Most importantly, the stock market became America's new religion. You didn't need to understand companies. You didn't need experience. You didn't even need cash. People bought stocks on margin, paying only a small fraction up front and borrowing the rest. If prices went up, you sold, paid back the loan, and kept the profit. It felt like free money. Taxi drivers gave stock tips. Barbers discussed shares between haircuts. Teachers, farmers, shopkeepers all believed they had finally found a way into the American dream. President Herbert Hoover himself declared that poverty was nearly defeated. The message was clear: America had figured it out. But beneath the celebration, cracks were forming. Factories produced more than people could afford to buy. Wages lagged behind productivity. Farmers, already struggling since the end of World War I, watched crop prices collapse while debts piled up. Wealth concentrated at the top, while millions lived one missed paycheck away from disaster. Banks, unregulated and overconfident, gambled with depositors' money. The stock market soared far beyond the real value of the companies it represented. It was not growth, it was a balloon filled with borrowed air, and balloons always pop. The warning signs were there. A few economists whispered concerns. Some investors quietly sold their holdings, but in a country obsessed with optimism, caution sounded like betrayal. Then came October 24th, 1929. When the market opened that morning, something felt wrong. Stocks began to fall, slowly at first, then faster. Selling orders flooded in. Ticker machines lagged behind reality, reporting prices minutes, then hours late. No one knew what their stocks were worth anymore. Panic spread across Wall Street like a virus. By midday, millions of shares were being dumped. Fortunes evaporated between heartbeats. Men who had been wealthy at breakfast were ruined by lunch. Police struggled to control crowds outside the New York Stock Exchange. Bankers rushed into emergency meetings. A group of powerful financiers intervened, buying large blocks of stock to calm the market. For a moment, it worked. Prices steadied. Newspapers printed reassuring headlines. America exhaled. But the relief was temporary. 5 days later, on October 29, the market collapsed completely. 16 million shares traded hands in a single day, an unimaginable number at the time. There were no buyers, only sellers. Prices fell so fast that ticker machines simply gave up. People stared at the tape in disbelief, knowing it no longer reflected reality. By the closing bell, billions of dollars in paper wealth had vanished. Some investors fainted, others wept openly. A few jumped from buildings, though later exaggerated by legend, the despair was real enough. The stock market crash did not cause the Great Depression by itself, but it pulled the trigger. At first, many believed the damage was contained, but the stock market was deeply connected to the banking system, and banks were fragile. As stock values collapsed, loans went unpaid. Banks began to fail. When one bank closed, panic spread to others. Depositors rushed to withdraw their savings, often finding locked doors and empty vaults. There was no federal deposit insurance. When a bank failed, your money was simply gone. Businesses, unable to get credit, shut down. Factories slowed, then stopped. Layoffs came in waves. Lines formed outside employment offices that had nothing to offer. By 1930, the silence had reached Main Street. Lives unraveled. In Chicago, a steelworker named Thomas O'Neill walked home carrying his lunch pail, unused. He had been laid off that morning, along with hundreds of others. The foreman said orders had dried up. No one knew when work would return. In Oklahoma, farmers watched dust rise from fields that no longer held moisture. Crops failed. Banks seized land. Families packed what they could carry and left behind homes their grandparents had built. In New York, elegant restaurants closed their doors. Soup kitchens opened in their place. People stopped spending, not because they didn't want to, but because they were afraid. Every dollar was survival. Every purchase felt risky. The country that once roared now whispered. A nation unprepared. President Hoover believed the economy would correct itself. He feared government intervention would weaken American character. Aid, he insisted, should come from charities and local communities. But the crisis was too big. By 1932, 1 in 4 Americans was unemployed. Thousands of banks had collapsed. Industrial production had been cut in half. Shanty towns sprang up on the edges of cities, built from scrap wood and cardboard. People bitterly called them Hoovervilles. The American dream, once loud and confident, had gone quiet, and the worst was yet to come. By the winter of 1930, America no longer sounded like a nation at work. Factories that once roared day and night stood still, their smokestacks cold against gray skies. Railroad yards echoed with emptiness. Storefronts went dark, one by one, their windows covered with brown paper and handwritten signs that said simply, "Closed." For millions of Americans, unemployment was not a statistic, it was hunger. Men who had spent their lives providing for families now stood silently in bread lines, hats pulled low, eyes fixed on the ground. Pride was swallowed before every step forward. A bowl of soup, a slice of bread, that was the reward for waiting hours in the cold. Women patched old clothes until fabric became memory. Children learned early not to ask for things. And everywhere, there was shame. Perhaps the most devastating loss was not money, but trust. People no longer trusted banks. They hid cash in mattresses, jars, coffee cans buried in backyards. Some withdrew everything they had and never returned. Entire communities operated on fear, rumors, and desperation. A single whisper, that bank might fail, was enough to destroy it. Banks fell like dominoes. With each failure, businesses lost payroll accounts. Workers lost wages they had already earned. Savings meant for college, retirement, or emergencies vanished overnight. The system that was supposed to protect the American middle class had betrayed it. Children grew up fast during the Great Depression. In cities, young boys shined shoes, sold newspapers, or scavenged coal from railroad tracks to heat their homes. Girls dropped out of school to care for siblings while parents searched for work. In rural America, childhood disappeared into labor. Kids worked fields, hauled water, slaughtered chickens, anything to keep families alive. Many never returned to school. Years later, survivors would recall the same memory again and again. The sound of an empty house at lunchtime. No clatter of dishes, no smell of food, just silence. The Dust Bowl, when the land turned against its people. While cities struggled, rural America faced a nightmare of its own. Years of poor farming practices combined with drought turned the Great Plains into a wasteland. Topsoil dried, lifted, and blew away. Dust storms swallowed towns whole, black clouds that turned noon into midnight. People called them black blizzards. Dust seeped into everything: lungs, food, beds, dreams. Crops failed year after year. Livestock starved. Wells ran dry. Farmers watched land their families had worked for generations disappear, literally blown away by the wind. Banks foreclosed. Sheriffs arrived with eviction notices. Families loaded belongings onto trucks and left behind graves, churches, memories. They headed west. California became a symbol of hope. Migrants, often called Okies regardless of origin, traveled Route 66 in overloaded cars and trucks, chasing rumors of jobs and oranges growing freely on trees. The reality was brutal. Jobs were scarce, wages were low, camps were overcrowded. Locals viewed migrants as threats, not neighbors. Families lived in tents, boxes, and makeshift shacks. Disease spread easily. Hunger was constant. Yet still they came, because staying meant certain death. Leaving offered at least a chance. Herbert Hoover's presidency became inseparable from the Depression. Though he was not indifferent, he organized conferences, encouraged businesses to maintain wages, promoted volunteer relief. His refusal to provide direct federal aid defined public perception. To struggling Americans, it felt like abandonment. In 1932, thousands of World War I veterans marched on Washington demanding early payment of promised bonuses. They camped near the Capitol with families, desperate and broke. The government responded with force. When troops moved in to clear the camps, buildings burned. Veterans were driven out with bayonets and tear gas. Photographs shocked the nation. Confidence in leadership collapsed. By 1932, Americans were ready for something, anything different. Franklin Roosevelt offered hope, even without clear details. He spoke of action, experimentation, and responsibility. Most importantly, he spoke directly to the people. When Roosevelt won in a landslide, the country exhaled. In March 1933, banks across the nation closed temporarily under a declared bank holiday. Panic paused. Regulations followed. Trust began, slowly, to rebuild. Then Roosevelt spoke on the radio. His voice was calm, reassuring, human. The fireside chats made Americans feel spoken to, not talked at. For the first time in years, silence began to lift. The New Deal reshaped America. Government hired the unemployed to build roads, bridges, schools, parks. Young men planted trees and restored forests. Artists documented suffering and hope. Social Security was born. Labor protections followed. It did not end the Depression overnight, but it gave Americans something they had lost: dignity. Work returned, not charity, but purpose. The Great Depression ended officially with World War II, when factories roared again and unemployment vanished into uniformed service. But its impact never truly ended. Those who lived through it became savers, not spenders. They distrusted debt, they feared waste, they respected work above all else. They taught their children lessons written not in textbooks, but in hunger. Even decades later, survivors would say the same thing. You never forget what it feels like when everything stops. The Great Depression was not just an economic collapse, it was a psychological one. A moment when America realized that progress was fragile, that prosperity could vanish, that the dream required protection, not blind faith. The silence it created reshaped laws, institutions, and beliefs. And in that silence, America learned how close it could come to losing itself.